Far away from Earth, deep in the quiet darkness of space, there was a small human colony called New Dawn. It was one of humanity's proudest achievements, a world built from nothing but dust and hope. The colony stood as a sign that humans could thrive even beyond their home planet. People there lived simple but meaningful lives. They worked hard, grew their food, and built homes under the twin suns that warmed their new world. Children played in open fields, and at night, families would sit together watching the stars above. To them, the stars were not just lights. They were promises of a bright future. But that peaceful dream didn't last. One morning, long before the suns rose, the sky over New Dawn was filled with strange shapes. Enormous alien warships cutting through the clouds like knives. No one knew who they were or why they came. At first, the colonists thought it might be a mistake, maybe explorers or traders. But then, without warning, the ships opened fire. The attacks were merciless. Energy beams ripped through cities, burning everything in seconds. The peaceful colony had no defenses strong enough to fight back. People ran for safety, but there was nowhere to go. Within hours, the once thriving world turned into ashes and silence. The few survivors who managed to hide could only watch as everything they had built was erased. No one ever sent a message back to Earth. Communication was cut before the first hour of the attack. The alien ships left just as fast as they had arrived, leaving behind only smoke and ruins. The space around New Dawn became empty again, but the silence it held was heavy, full of unanswered questions. Back on Earth, weeks passed. The command centers noticed that New Dawn had gone dark. At first, they thought it was a technical problem, a failed satellite or communication relay. Engineers tried again and again to reconnect, but every signal came back dead. The colony had vanished from every system. The Earth Council, a group that managed all human colonies, grew uneasy. They decided to send a scout vessel to check what had happened. It was a small ship, manned by only a few brave crew members. The journey took several days through the deep roots of space. But when they reached New Dawn, all they found were ruins. The once green world had turned gray. The cities were gone, the sky filled with dust and the air thick with radiation. The scouts recorded everything, the burnt buildings, the wreckage, the signs of massive explosions. They found no survivors. Only a single message was recovered from a damaged communication tower. It was a distress signal, half broken, full of static. The only clear words were, "They came from the dark." No warning, no mercy. When that message reached Earth, everything changed. The news spread across the planet and its colonies like wildfire. People wept, angry and heartbroken at the loss of their brothers and sisters. New Dawn had been home to hundreds of thousands of families. Every person had a dream, a future, and now all of it was gone. For the first time in 100 years, Earth's skies filled with the noise of war preparation. The united human fleet, which had been silent for generations, started to awaken. The vast shipyards orbiting Earth came alive again. Machines roared as engineers worked day and night. From every nation and every colony, soldiers and pilots answered the call. Humanity was not going to stay silent. Among the crowds that gathered to watch the warships being built, old veterans spoke quietly about Earth's past, how humans had once fought wars among themselves, how those days were over. Now, for the first time, humanity was united not against each other, but against an unknown enemy. In every city, people lit candles for the lost souls of New Dawn. The pictures of the destroyed colony played on every screen. Children asked their parents why someone would do such a thing. No one had an answer. The only thing everyone agreed on was that justice had to be served. Months passed as Earth prepared. Every spaceport, every factory, and every defense station was focused on one goal: to bring the fleet back to full strength. The largest warships ever built, known as Titan class, were pulled from deep storage. They hadn't been used for centuries, but now they were being reborn with new technology and fresh crews. Smaller ships were built in thousands, forming new fleets to support the larger vessels. The number of warships kept growing, 10,000, then 100,000, then 500,000. Engineers joked that if someone looked up from Mars, they could see the glow of engines shining brighter than the sun. But behind the jokes, there was quiet determination. Every ship meant another step closer to justice. During this time, scientists studied the ruins and the recordings from New Dawn. They tried to identify who the attackers were. The energy signatures from the weapons didn't match any known alien civilization humanity had ever encountered. Whoever had done this was powerful, and they wanted to send a message, a cruel one. The Earth Council debated for weeks. Some said humanity should wait, investigate more, or try to make peace. But the voices of the survivors' families were louder. They demanded action. If they can destroy one colony today, people said, they can destroy Earth tomorrow. Finally, after endless arguments, the Council gave the order: mobilize the entire human fleet. 700,000 warships, large and small, were to depart from Earth's orbit. It was the biggest fleet humanity had ever assembled in its history. Every ship was armed, every crew trained and ready. From carriers to cruisers, from stealth ships to dreadnoughts, they formed lines across the black of space. Before departure, the Earth's leader stood before the fleet in a massive broadcast viewed by billions. His voice was calm but filled with emotion. Today, he said, we do not go to conquer. We go to protect what is ours. We go to remind the stars that humanity will never bow. Those who wiped out New Dawn thought we would be silent, but they were wrong. We are the children of Earth, and we do not forget. The speech echoed through every corner of the planet. People cheered, cried, and saluted as the first wave of ships left orbit. The sky shimmered with trails of blue light as engines roared into the void. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a storm of power heading toward the unknown. Inside the ships, soldiers sat quietly, their faces lit by screens showing the last images of New Dawn. Some whispered prayers. Others stared ahead, full of anger and determination. None of them knew what awaited them beyond the stars, but all of them carried the same feeling. They were going to make the attackers pay. Back on Earth, silence fell again. The world that had been full of engines and sirens was now still waiting for news. Families held on to hope that their loved ones would return. Children dreamed of a future where no one would ever have to fight again. And far away beyond human reach, in a part of the galaxy still uncharted, something stirred. The same enemy that had destroyed New Dawn watched quietly from the shadows. Their scanners picked up the movement of the human fleet. They didn't expect such a response. They had thought humans were weak, scattered, too small to matter. But now, for the first time, fear touched their minds, because they could see what was coming. Earth's 700,000 warships were on their way, fueled by grief, anger, and the unbreakable will of a species that refused to be forgotten. And this was only the beginning. The human fleet moved silently through the endless dark of space. 700,000 warships traveled together in perfect formation, their lights glowing softly like a moving city among the stars. From a distance, they looked calm, but inside, every ship was alive with activity. Pilots checked controls again and again. Engineers ran tests on engines. Soldiers trained in the halls, preparing for what was coming. No one spoke much. The destruction of New Dawn still echoed in everyone's mind. Every person had seen the images of the burned colony, the empty cities, and the smoke-filled skies. Many had lost friends or family there. They didn't need speeches or orders to know what they were fighting for. Inside one of the command ships, the crew stared at a giant screen that showed the path to the outer systems. The fleet's journey would take weeks. They would pass through silent zones, old battlefields, and uncharted regions where signals faded easily. Communication was limited, and every day brought a quiet tension. Still, they moved forward. The humans didn't know exactly who had attacked New Dawn. The scientists had only managed to trace faint energy readings unlike anything seen before. But deep in everyone's heart, one truth was clear. Whoever had done it would pay. Back on Earth, life had changed completely. The planet that once glowed with peaceful cities now worked as one giant machine of preparation and support. Families sent messages of encouragement to the fleet. Factories kept running day and night, building more supplies. People wrote letters, painted murals, and held moments of silence for the lost colony. Humanity had never been this united before, but even with all the pride and hope, fear was still there. Silent, hidden. No one knew how strong the enemy was. The only proof of their power was the destruction of an entire colony in a single day. If they could do that, what else were they? Capable of inside the fleet's lead ship, the commanders met daily. They studied the reports from the scout teams, the few pieces of data they had. Every trace, every signal was studied carefully. Then, one day, the scanners picked up something faint, an energy pulse, far ahead, near the region where New Dawn once stood. It wasn't human-made. The order went out instantly. Change course and investigate. Hours later, small recon ships were sent ahead. They moved quietly, using stealth engines to avoid detection. The rest of the fleet slowed down, waiting for their return. Every minute felt longer than an hour. When the scouts finally came back, their report was short, but it changed everything. They had found remains of massive alien structures floating in space, metal pieces, broken ships, and strange symbols marked on them. It was a sign that the attackers weren't far. One of the broken alien ships was still giving off weak signals, almost like a heartbeat. It was a message, though no one knew if it was meant to lure or warn. Still, humanity couldn't turn away now. The order came again. Move forward. As the fleet approached the remains, the space around them grew darker. The stars seemed to fade, swallowed by an invisible fog. Energy readings began to fluctuate, and the ship's systems flickered for a few seconds. Engineers rushed to stabilize them. It was clear they had entered enemy territory. Then, without warning, a strange sound echoed through the communication systems, a low hum that grew louder. At first, the humans thought it was interference. But when the sound turned into a pattern, repeating like a message, everyone realized it wasn't noise. Someone, or something, was trying to speak. Linguists and AI translators worked fast to decode it. The message was full of symbols, unfamiliar tones, and alien grammar. But one phrase stood out, translated clearly into human language. "You should have stayed silent." The command rooms across the fleet went still. It was the first time the enemy had spoken. And it wasn't a warning, it was a threat. Moments later, the radar screens lit up. Dozens, then hundreds of unknown ships appeared from the darkness. Their shapes were sharp and strange, like blades of light cutting through the void. They surrounded the humans from all sides. The fleet held formation. No one fired yet. Humanity didn't want another mistake. The Earth Council's command sent a message to the aliens, offering a chance to talk, to explain. The signal was transmitted across all channels. For a long moment, there was no reply. Then, the enemy ships moved closer. Their lights changed color, shifting from cold blue to bright red. Everyone on board the human ships understood what that meant. Battle mode. The enemy fired first. Streams of energy shot across space, striking the front lines of the human fleet. Shields flared, alarms rang, and the dark silence of space was replaced by the sound of war. For the first time in centuries, humanity was fighting again, not against itself but for its survival. The human fleet responded immediately. Cannons turned, missiles launched, and beams of plasma streaked through the void. Space lit up like lightning storms. Dozens of ships exploded on both sides, their debris scattering in all directions. Inside the command ships, officers shouted orders while engineers worked to keep shields up. Pilots moved with speed and focus, dodging enemy fire. No one had time to think, only to act. Despite the chaos, the humans fought well. Years of training, technology, and unity paid off. The fleet's coordination was unmatched. Every ship knew its role. Every pilot trusted the one beside them. They weren't fighting for conquest. They were fighting for the memory of New Dawn. Hours passed and the battle grew heavier. The enemy ships were fast and powerful, but they weren't expecting such resistance. For every human ship that fell, 2 enemy vessels went down. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Then, in the middle of the battle, the alien voice returned. This time it was stronger, colder. "You should not have come here. You do not belong in this part of the stars." But humanity didn't answer with words. The only reply was the roar of their engines and the fire of their weapons. After what felt like forever, the enemy ships began to retreat. One by one, they vanished into the darkness, leaving trails of energy behind. The humans didn't chase them. They were cautious. The damage to the fleet was heavy. Hundreds of ships were lost, but thousands remained. When silence finally returned to space, the human crews looked out through their viewing windows. The wreckage of the enemy ships floated slowly, glowing faintly. They had survived their first real encounter, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. Back on Earth, when news of the battle reached home, people cheered and cried at the same time. The first message from the fleet was short. We found them. We fought back. We are still here. The world celebrated their courage, but the leaders were more cautious. If that was only the enemy's scout force, what would the main army look like? The human commander gathered his officers. They analyzed the data from the battle, the enemy weapons, ship designs, and tactics. One thing became clear. These aliens weren't new to war. They had fought many civilizations before, and they had always won. But now, for the first time, they had met someone who fought back with equal strength. In the quiet that followed, one of the officers said softly, "They thought we'd be easy to erase. They were wrong." Everyone agreed. Humanity had taken its first step toward vengeance, but the road ahead was long. The fleet had to push deeper, into alien space to find the heart of their empire, the place where the order to destroy New Dawn had come from. As the ships repaired and refueled, messages of support kept coming from Earth and the colonies. People sent songs, pictures, and letters. It reminded the soldiers of what they were protecting, not just land or power, but their people, their future, their home. In the distance, the remains of the alien fleet still drifted silently. The stars around them flickered faintly, as if warning that something much darker was waiting beyond. But the humans didn't turn back. They had already lost too much to stop now. Every pilot, every soldier, every engineer carried the same thought in their heart. New Dawn must be avenged. And somewhere, far ahead in the uncharted systems, the real enemy was watching them come, preparing for the war that would decide the fate of both species. Humanity had awakened, and this time the stars themselves would remember their fury. The battlefield behind them was still glowing faintly, scattered with the remains of both human and alien ships. But the fleet did not stop. After days of quiet repairs, the command gave the next order: move deeper into enemy space. The first battle had proven one thing: humanity could stand against this unknown power. Now they had to find where it came from. Each ship drifted through the stars like a silent guardian. Inside, crews worked with steady focus. The soldiers barely slept. They trained, cleaned the weapons, and checked the systems again and again. The thought of New Dawn never left their minds. Some carried small pictures or recordings of the colony's people. Others just kept the memory alive inside their hearts. Outside the windows, space was endless. The stars seemed colder the farther they went. Strange clouds of energy floated around them, glowing blue and green. The scientists said it was a part of the galaxy never explored by humans. The instruments often failed, and sensors picked up whispers, faint radio signals that sounded almost like voices. Then, one night, the long-range scanners detected something big. It wasn't a fleet or a station. It was an entire world, a planet surrounded by artificial rings and enormous towers stretching into space. The readings showed millions of life forms on the surface. Everyone in the command center stared at the screen in silence. Could this be one of the alien homeworlds? The enemy's base? No one knew for sure, but one thing was certain. It was not an ordinary planet. The command decided to approach carefully. Recon ships went first, gliding through the darkness without lights. Hours passed, and the tension grew heavier with every minute. Then the first images came back. The planet below looked both beautiful and frightening. Its surface shimmered with silver cities built in perfect circles. Rivers of light connected the cities, forming shapes that looked like veins from space. The air above the planet sparkled with energy shields, strong enough to stop any attack. But the most shocking part was what they found in orbit: hundreds of destroyed alien ships, floating lifelessly. It wasn't humans who had done that. Something else had attacked this world before. The scientists studied the data carefully. The damage to those alien ships was massive, but it looked different from human weapons. The metal had melted, twisted in unnatural ways. It seemed like the planet had turned on its own defenders. No one understood how or why. But one thing was certain: something powerful was hidden on that world. The command council met and decided to send a small team down to the surface. The goal was to gather information, not to fight. The fleet needed to know what kind of enemy they were really dealing with. As the landing ships descended, the crews watched from their windows as the planet grew larger. Clouds of glowing mist surrounded it, and flashes of lightning rolled through the upper atmosphere. When the ships broke through, they saw the ruins of what had once been massive cities. The surface was quiet, too quiet. Buildings were empty, streets were cracked, and strange symbols covered the walls. The team walked through the ruins, recording everything. It looked like the aliens had once lived here in huge numbers. But something had wiped them out long ago. Then, deep inside one of the broken towers, the team found a large metallic chamber still powered by a faint blue glow. In the center stood a massive machine shaped like a sphere. It was humming softly, almost like it was breathing. When they scanned it, they realized it was an ancient data core. The markings on it matched the same language used in the enemy's warning message. You should have stayed silent. After hours of work, the engineers managed to activate part of it. The machine came alive, projecting a faint holographic image of an alien figure. Its body was tall and thin, its face hidden by a mask of light. The message it spoke was broken, but the translation system caught enough words to understand its meaning. The alien voice said, "They came from beyond the dark. They were not born here. We built the weapons to stop them, but we failed. If you find this, run. They will return." Then the hologram faded away and the chamber went silent again. The humans looked at each other, confused. The aliens who destroyed New Dawn were not the original inhabitants of this world. They were something else. Something worse. When the message was sent back to the command ship, the entire council listened carefully. The discovery changed everything. Humanity had been preparing for war against a known enemy, but now it seemed there was a much greater danger hiding in the shadows. Still, the mission could not stop. The fleet had already come too far, and turning back meant leaving the truth buried forever. The humans needed to find out who these invaders were and why they had attacked. As the landing ships prepared to return to orbit, something unexpected happened. The ground started shaking. The energy readings from the planet spiked suddenly. The blue lights on the towers turned red, and a deep rumbling filled the air. Before anyone could react, beams of energy shot from the ground toward the sky, hitting one of the landing ships. The shields flared, but the force was too strong. The ship barely escaped, damaged but alive. Back in orbit, alarms echoed through the fleet. The planet below was waking up. Giant structures began to rise from beneath the surface like machines buried for centuries. Their surfaces glowed with the same symbols seen on the enemy ships. It became clear. The planet wasn't dead. It was a weapon. The fleet immediately pulled back. The commander ordered a full retreat from the planet's orbit. Within minutes, the machines on the surface fired again, sending massive bursts of energy toward the humans. Dozens of ships were hit, and one of the smaller cruisers exploded in a silent flash of light. The humans responded with defense fire, not to destroy, but to cover their retreat. Space lit up once more with explosions and streaks of energy. The fleet moved quickly, engines blazing as they escaped the planet's pull. When they finally reached a safe distance, everyone stared at the screens. The planet's surface was now glowing completely red, and the symbols pulsed in patterns like a heartbeat. It was alive in some strange way, and it was angry. Later, when things calmed down, the council met again. The scientists explained their theory. The aliens who had destroyed New Dawn were not the builders of those machines. They had found them and used them. Maybe they didn't even understand the power they had awakened. That would mean humanity was not fighting just one enemy, but possibly two, the invaders and whatever ancient force they had unleashed. Despite the growing danger, the human fleet stayed united. Messages from Earth reminded them why they were there, not to conquer, not to destroy, but to make sure no one else suffered the same fate as New Dawn. Over the next few days, the fleet moved carefully, scanning space for clues. They found traces of massive energy trails leading toward another system farther ahead. The command decided to follow them. As they moved, crews took quiet moments to look out at the stars. The silence between the battles felt heavy. Everyone wondered what kind of force could wipe out entire civilizations. But none of them were afraid to face it. Humanity had already lost too much to turn back now. Before the next jump, a message came from Earth. It was simple but powerful. Whatever you find, remember who you are. You carry the voice of billions. You carry the hope of humanity. Those words filled every heart with strength. Engines lit up and the fleet moved forward again. Far away, in the deep reaches of the galaxy, a cluster of alien ships watched them approach. They weren't running this time, they were waiting. The real war hadn't even begun. And somewhere beyond that dark horizon, the mystery of who truly destroyed New Dawn was waiting to be uncovered. The human fleet drifted in silence after escaping the deadly planet. The crews were tired, but their spirits remained strong. They had faced something far beyond their understanding, an ancient world filled with machines older than any known civilization. Yet even with the danger growing, the humans didn't turn back. They knew they had to keep going. The command ships floated together in formation, surrounded by smaller vessels. Engineers worked endlessly to repair the damage from the last battle. Some ships were scarred, their armor blackened, their engines flickering. But every repair brought hope. Each spark, each working system reminded the crews that humanity still stood strong. Inside the command room, the officers studied the data from the planet. The strange symbols that glowed red across its surface seemed to form a repeating pattern. After hours of decoding, the linguists realized it wasn't just decoration, it was a warning. A single message written in a language older than both humans and the invaders. The sleepers will awaken again. No one knew what it meant, but deep down everyone felt it wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The fleet's next destination was the system the enemy signals had come from. Long-range scanners showed signs of energy movement, possible warships regrouping. If they could find the enemy's main base, they might finally understand who had attacked New Dawn and why. The journey took several days. Space grew darker and colder as they moved deeper into the unknown regions. The stars here were dim and far apart, as if even light itself feared this place. During those days, the soldiers tried to keep themselves busy. Some watched old recordings from Earth, families, oceans, cities full of life. Others sat quietly, staring at the endless black outside the window, thinking of home. Even though they were far from Earth, every heart in that fleet carried a piece of it. Then one morning in ship time, the silence broke. The scanners picked up massive energy readings ahead. The operators' voices shook slightly as they reported, multiple structures detected, unknown origin, large signatures, possibly a fortress. When the image came up on the main screen, everyone fell silent. It was not just a base, it was an entire world turned into a weapon. Gigantic rings of metal surrounded the planet, glowing with blue light. Dozens of smaller moons orbited it, each covered in turrets and towers. The readings showed thousands of alien ships stationed there, moving in perfect patterns. The commanders looked at each other. They had found the enemy's heart. The Council on Earth was immediately informed. They watched from thousands of light years away as the human fleet prepared for its most dangerous mission yet. The decision was clear. This was where justice for New Dawn would begin. The command was simple but heavy. Engage only if attacked. Observe first. Find proof of who ordered the strike. So the fleet approached slowly, broadcasting peaceful signals in every direction. Humanity wanted answers, not another massacre. The message they sent said, "We come for truth. You destroyed our colony. We wish to know why." For a moment, nothing happened. The alien ships continued to move silently in formation. Then one of the larger vessels turned toward the humans. Its hull glowed with strange lights, symbols that pulsed in rhythm like a heartbeat. A deep voice echoed through the communication channels. "Truth," it said. "You claim this word, yet you do not understand what you are facing." The human commander responded calmly, "We understand enough. You destroyed our people on New Dawn. We demand to know the reason." There was a pause. Then the alien voice spoke again, colder this time. New Dawn was built on forbidden ground. You woke what should never wake. Your kind spread across the stars without knowing what sleeps beneath them. We ended that mistake. The humans exchanged shocked looks. Forbidden ground? What did that mean? The alien continued. You call us invaders, but we were the ones who tried to contain the darkness. You broke the seal. Before the commander could ask more, the transmission ended. And then, the alien fleet moved. Thousands of ships powered up, spreading out like a storm. The humans had no choice. The battle began. The sky exploded with color as plasma beams, missiles, and energy blasts filled the darkness. Human warships held their lines firmly, shields glowing bright as they absorbed the first wave of fire. The enemy ships were fast, faster than anything humans had faced before. But the human fleet fought with perfect coordination. Cruisers moved in tight formations, covering each other as they launched waves of counterfire. Fighter craft zipped between larger ships, hunting down enemy drones. The command ship stayed in the center, directing every move like a giant orchestra of war. For hours, the battle raged. Space itself seemed to shake under the force of the weapons. Some ships were lost, their lights fading into the dark, but more took their place. The humans refused to retreat. Then something unexpected happened. A massive explosion tore through the alien formation, not from human fire, but from within their own ranks. Several enemy ships turned against their allies, firing wildly. Confusion spread through the alien fleet. The humans took advantage, pushing forward with all their strength. Soon the enemy's formation broke apart, but the victory didn't last long. From the surface of the planet below, a huge object began to rise. It wasn't a ship. It was a structure the size of a small moon. Its surface glowed red, the same symbols from the dead planet appearing again. As it lifted into space, the human scanners went crazy. The readings were off the charts, energy levels higher than anything ever recorded. The alien ship suddenly stopped fighting and turned away, fleeing into the distance. That's when the humans realized the aliens weren't retreating out of fear of the fleet. They were running from what they had awakened. The giant structure began to pulse like a living thing. Waves of energy rippled outward, distorting space itself. One of the human ships that got too close simply vanished. No explosion, no sound, just gone. The commander gave the order to pull back immediately. But before they could escape, the strange energy wave hit the edge of the fleet. Lights flickered, systems failed, and for a moment everything went dark. Then through the static and the flickering screens came a voice, low, ancient, and almost human. They came to my world. They took my silence. Now I will take theirs. The crews froze. The scientists couldn't identify the source of the signal. It was everywhere and nowhere at once. It wasn't from a ship or the planet, but from space itself. The humans realized something terrifying. This wasn't a normal weapon or machine. It was a consciousness, an intelligence trapped in technology older than time. The alien race that attacked New Dawn had tried to control it, and failed. Now it was awake again. The human fleet managed to recover some systems and escape the immediate area. Engines roared as ships pulled back into safer space, dragging damaged vessels behind them. When they finally regrouped, the silence was heavy. Everyone was shaken but alive. The recordings of that voice were played again and again in the command room. Scientists argued over what it could be. Some believed it was an AI, left behind by an ancient civilization. Others thought it was a being made of pure energy. But one thing was certain. It was the real reason New Dawn had been destroyed. The aliens hadn't attacked out of cruelty. They had tried to stop humanity from waking something far more dangerous. Still, the truth didn't make the pain any less. Thousands had died, and the galaxy now faced a threat none fully understood. The commander looked out at the stars and spoke softly to the crew. We didn't start this, but we have to finish it. We can't run. We have to find a way to stop whatever that thing is. No one disagreed. Every face in that room was set with quiet determination. Humanity had come too far to turn back now. The fleet began repairs again, preparing for what would come next. Somewhere ahead, the glowing red structure still hovered above the alien world, its symbols pulsing slowly. And beyond that, the stars were waiting, dark, silent, and full of secrets. Humanity was ready to face them all. The human fleet floated quietly in deep space. The light of distant stars shimmered across the metal of 700,000 warships. After what they had just seen, even the bravest hearts were shaken. The strange red structure, the voice that spoke from nowhere, it had changed everything. No one could sleep. Every screen on every ship replayed the recordings from that day. The energy surge, the alien retreat, and the voice that echoed through the void. It didn't sound like a machine, but it didn't sound alive either. It was something in between, something ancient. Inside the command ship, the atmosphere was heavy. Officers spoke in low voices. Engineers worked non-stop to fix the systems damaged by the energy wave. The scientists studied the signals again and again, trying to understand what they had heard. The leader of the mission finally gathered the entire fleet through a live broadcast. The faces of captains and soldiers appeared across thousands of screens. His voice was calm but filled with emotion. "We have seen the truth," he said. "The aliens destroyed New Dawn because they feared something hidden beneath it. They tried to stop it but failed. Now that same thing is awake, and it threatens not just them but all of us. Humanity did not start this war, but we cannot turn away. If we do nothing, this force will spread, and everything we love will vanish. The speech was short, but it touched every heart. Every soldier understood the mission had changed. This was no longer only about revenge, it was about survival. The fleet's scientists started to piece together a theory. They believed the ancient machines on that planet and the red structure that rose from it were all connected. The symbols and energy signatures matched those found deep under the ruins of New Dawn. That meant the dark force wasn't something new. It had been under humanity's feet the entire time. When New Dawn was built, the colonists had dug deep underground to build their power systems. Without knowing it, they had disturbed the sleeping core of this ancient being. That's why the aliens attacked so fast and so violently. They were trying to stop it before it could awaken. But it was too late. The attack destroyed the colony, but also broke the last seal that had kept the ancient power trapped. Now, it was free, and it was growing stronger. Days turned into weeks as the fleet moved carefully, staying just outside the enemy's main systems. Drones were sent to gather information. They recorded strange movements of energy, as if the red structure was spreading its power across space. In some areas, even the stars seemed to dim. The fleet's communication systems began to experience strange interference. Sometimes whispers could be heard through the speakers, soft, almost human voices saying words no one could understand. Some of the younger soldiers grew nervous, but the officers reminded them to stay calm. Fear was the enemy's first weapon. Then one day a scouting team discovered something unexpected. Far from the alien world, they found another planet, smaller, hidden in a field of asteroids. When they scanned it, the readings shocked everyone. The same ancient energy was there, but much weaker. The commander made a quick decision. "We're going to land," he said. "We need to know how far this thing has spread." Several landing ships descended through the thin atmosphere. The planet below was silent, covered in black stone and dust. There were no signs of life, no cities, no movement, just the remains of what looked like old structures buried under layers of ash. As the team explored, they found tall, broken statues made of metal and stone. Strange carvings covered them, showing images of tall beings raising their hands toward the sky. Beneath the statues, the ground pulsed faintly with red light. The scientists quickly realized these were ancient temples built by the same civilization that created the machine. One of them found markings on the wall that translated roughly to, "We built the Guardian to protect the stars. But when it saw our wars, it judged us unworthy." It was a horrifying discovery. The dark force wasn't meant to be evil. It had once been built as a protector. But when it saw endless wars and destruction, it decided to erase everything it saw as dangerous. It didn't see difference between good or bad, only life capable of violence. That explained why it attacked New Dawn, and why it was now expanding its reach. To it, humanity was just another threat that needed to be erased. When this information reached the fleet, the silence was heavy. Everyone understood the truth now. They weren't fighting for revenge anymore. They were fighting for the right to exist. The engineers began working on countermeasures. Using data from the captured alien wrecks and their own advanced systems, they designed new shields that could resist the red energy for a short time. It wasn't perfect, but it gave them hope. Back on Earth, the Council received the full report. Factories increased production, building new ships and weapons. For the first time in human history, every colony, every moon base, and every outpost united under one command. Humanity was preparing for the biggest battle in its existence. Messages of hope flooded the communication channels. Families sent short recordings to their loved ones on the fleet, smiles, prayers, songs. The soldiers watched them quietly, drawing strength from the faces of the people they were fighting for. Then, one night, the sky lit up again. The fleet's sensors picked up massive energy movements from the alien world. The red structure had begun to spread its influence across space. It was forming huge waves of energy that consumed everything in their path. Planets went dark. Moons shattered. The aliens who had once fought humans were now fleeing too, their ships running in every direction. The humans had no more time to wait. The commander gave the order that everyone had known was coming. "All ships prepare for war. If this thing reaches Earth, everything will end. We fight here or we die everywhere." The 700,000 warships formed into massive formations, engines blazing. The largest carriers opened their hangars, launching millions of smaller crafts. The view from space was breathtaking, a sea of light stretching farther than the eye could see. Then, as the fleet moved forward, the red structure in the distance pulsed again. A wave of energy swept across the battlefield. The shields flared bright blue as they held against the first impact. Seconds later, the alien fleet reappeared. The same race that had once destroyed New Dawn was now flying beside humanity, not as allies but as survivors of the same enemy. Without a single word, both sides opened fire on the red structure. The sky exploded in light. Beams of energy, missiles, and plasma cannons struck the monstrous machine. The battle had begun. The humans fought with everything they had. Ships moved in perfect rhythm, covering each other, striking hard, pulling back, and striking again. The aliens did the same. For the first time, the two enemies fought side by side, not for conquest, but for survival. The red structure responded with terrifying power. It fired beams that tore through space, melting anything in their path. Each time a ship was hit, hundreds of lives were lost, but the fleet did not slow down. They pushed forward, determined to reach the core. Inside the command ship, alarms blared. Sparks flew from the panels as energy waves shook the hull. But no one stopped working. Every person knew the cost. Humanity's future depended on them. After hours of fighting, the structure's outer layer finally began to crack. Explosions rippled across its surface. The combined firepower of both fleets was working, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Thousands of ships were gone, their lights fading one by one into the darkness. Still, no one gave up. Humanity had always been at its best when things looked impossible. Then, as the red glow dimmed for a moment, the voice returned, louder and angrier than before. You were given life to build, not to destroy. And yet you fight. You will never learn. But this time the humans didn't listen. They had learned something the ancient machine never understood. They fought not out of hate, but out of love. Love for their home, their people, and the hope of tomorrow. The fleet continued to fire, their weapons glowing like stars in the night. The sound of engines and energy blasts filled the void, echoing across the galaxy. The battle for existence had truly begun, and in that moment, humanity showed the universe what it meant to be human, to fight for more than survival, to fight for meaning, for memory, for each other. The ancient machine had judged them unworthy, but humanity was about to prove it wrong. The battlefield burned with light brighter than any sun. Every starship, every fighter, and every pilot in the human fleet fought like they had nothing left to lose. The enemy was not a living creature, not an empire, but something ancient and merciless, a force that saw life itself as a mistake. The red structure in the distance had grown like a living wound across the black sky. It reached out with massive arms of energy, swallowing entire ships. Even the alien fleet, once the destroyers of human colonies, now stood shoulder to shoulder with humanity. Together, they were trying to stop the end of everything. The human commander stood at the center of the control room, eyes fixed on the holographic map glowing before him. Every few seconds, another section of the map flickered red, showing the loss of ships. Yet the humans held their ground, refusing to retreat. All communication channels were open. Across thousands of ships, human voices filled the air, orders, prayers, and words of courage. Engineers yelled over static, medics guided injured crew members, and pilots screamed battle cries as they flew straight into impossible danger. Despite all this chaos, one thing kept them united: hope. The scientists aboard the research vessels finally discovered something: a weakness. The red structure wasn't invincible. Its power came from a single core deep inside, a black sphere that pulsed like a heartbeat. If that core was destroyed, the entire structure would collapse, but reaching it was almost impossible. The area around it was surrounded by massive energy waves that tore through anything that came close. The commander knew the cost. If they sent ships there, most would not return. But there was no other choice. He gave the order. A special strike group of warships was to move directly toward the core. The rest of the fleet would stay behind and draw the enemy's attention. Everyone knew what that meant. The ones going forward would not come back. Before the final attack began, a message was sent through all channels. It came from the commander himself, his voice steady even as explosions shook the ship. "Listen carefully," he said. "We are not just fighting to win. We are fighting to remind the universe what humanity stands for. They destroyed our colonies. They thought fear would break us. But they forgot who we are. We are the children of Earth. We build, we dream, we fight, and we never give up. If this is our end, then let it be the kind that will be remembered when stars fade. The message spread across the fleet. Some soldiers smiled. Others wiped tears from their eyes, but every single one of them held their ground. Then the final battle began. The main fleet surged forward, firing everything they had. The combined light of 700,000 warships turned the darkness into a sea of blue and white fire. The alien ships followed beside them, their strange energy beams cutting through the air like ribbons of lightning. The red structure answered with fury. Huge waves of power struck out, destroying dozens of ships at once. But the humans kept moving forward. Their smaller crafts darted between explosions, dropping EMP charges and plasma torpedoes that tore open cracks in the red armor. In the middle of the chaos, the strike group broke through the enemy's defense. They flew straight toward the glowing black core. Every ship that got close was torn apart by energy waves, but still more came. One after another, ships fell, their crews shouting their last words through the radio. Inside one of the lead ships, the crew worked silently. The hull was breaking apart, alarms were ringing, but no one panicked. They knew their mission, to deliver the final weapon. It wasn't a bomb, but a special device created from alien and human technology. It could disrupt the energy that powered the red structure's core. They reached as close as they could, the ship shaking violently. The captain looked at the screen one last time, then gave a quiet order. "Do it! The weapon launched!" A small object, no bigger than a capsule, flew straight into the black core. For a moment, nothing happened. The battlefield froze. Every ship, human and alien alike, seemed to stop firing as they waited. Then the red glow began to flicker. The massive structure trembled. Cracks of blue light spread across its surface. It was working. A sudden voice echoed through the minds of everyone in the fleet. The same voice they had heard before, now filled with confusion and anger. "Why do you fight for destruction? Why do you risk your existence?" No one answered. The ships fired again, pushing forward as the structure began to break apart. The voice spoke again, weaker this time. "Your wars will return. Your hatred will rise again. You cannot change what you are." The commander, hearing this, finally spoke softly to himself, as if replying, "You're wrong. We may fall, but we always rise again. That's what makes us human." And with that, the weapon reached full power. A bright white light filled the sky. The red structure exploded from within, sending shockwaves across space. The energy pulse spread for thousands of kilometers, tearing apart everything connected to it. When the light faded, silence returned. The black core was gone. The red glow vanished. The remaining fragments of the structure floated quietly, lifeless and cold. Across the fleet, cheers broke out. Humans and aliens alike shouted in disbelief. The impossible had happened, they had won, but the victory came at a great cost. Half the human fleet was gone. Thousands of ships had been destroyed. Yet even in their loss there was pride. They had stopped something that could have ended every living world. The surviving ships turned back toward Earth. As they traveled through space, they could finally see the stars again, bright, peaceful, and endless. Weeks later, the fleet entered the solar system. The people of Earth watched the skies as small glowing dots appeared, ships returning home. Cities across the planet lit up in celebration. Bells rang, lights flashed, and people cried as they saw the surviving heroes return. When the commander's ship finally landed, he stepped out and looked up at the sky. The air of Earth felt different, cleaner, softer. He had been gone for years, yet it felt like a lifetime. Around him, people cheered and hugged each other. For the first time in centuries, humanity felt united, not by fear or power, but by something deeper, shared survival. Later, in a great ceremony, the leaders of Earth and the other colonies stood before the gathered crowd. They didn't speak of revenge anymore. Instead, they spoke of rebuilding, of learning, and of remembering. One leader said, "We fought against the darkness and we survived. But if we forget what we've learned, if we go back to hatred and greed, then everything we lost will mean nothing. The universe gave us another chance. Let's not waste it." The crowd stood in silence, then slowly began to clap. The sound spread, growing louder until it echoed across the entire field. That night, as stars filled the sky, the surviving soldiers sat together, watching the horizon. Some talked about home, some about the friends they lost. Others said nothing, just stared at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there the remains of the red machine still floated in silence. No one knew if it was truly gone. Some scientists believed parts of its consciousness might still exist, sleeping, waiting. But for now, the universe was quiet. Humanity began to rebuild its colonies, not as outposts of power, but as places of peace and learning. New Dawn, the colony that had started it all, was reborn, not as a fortress, but as a memorial. At its center stood a monument built from the remains of the fallen ships, engraved with simple words. For those who fought so we could live. For those who taught us what it means to be human. Years passed, and the story of the Great War became legend. Children learned about it in schools, and explorers carried its memory into the farthest reaches of space. Humanity had faced extinction and survived, and though the scars of war remained, so did the spirit that made humans who they were, the will to hope, to fight and to dream, far beyond the edge of known space, where the last fragments of the red structure drifted in silence. A faint spark of light blinked once, then disappeared. Maybe it was just a dying remnant of energy, or maybe, somewhere in the endless dark, the universe was reminding itself that even the smallest spark can start again. But this time, humanity would be ready, because they had learned that their greatest strength was not in their ships or weapons. It was in their hearts, and that was something no machine could ever destroy.